Space Podcast, Third Space Podcast, Third Space Podcast, Third Space Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Third Space Podcast, episode number 50, Honeymooning. We made it to episode 50. That's pretty cool. We did nothing special for it. It's a normal episode, but nevertheless, we made it. So congrats. I'll say congrats to ourselves now, patting myself on the back. This episode, we talk about a little bit about risk assessment and values, particularly of teenagers. Daniel shares an anecdote, and we discuss that briefly. And then we talk about Daniel's honeymoon, which is the reason why we missed a couple weeks on our podcast here. He talks about what he did. We take an adventure in etymology about the word honeymoon. And then we discuss travel in general, more broadly, vacations, why people vacation, what are the benefits, maybe what are some of the drawbacks even of travel, and some of the odd ways that people travel around, why they value it. It was a fun conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Take it away.
Third Space Podcast, Third Space Podcast, Third Space Podcast, Third Space Podcast.
I was gonna do the whole thing, but yeah.
Whistle
Still
intro.
love it.
I still love it too.
Yeah.
I don't love it
I don't
enough
think
to
I'll ever
sing every time.
Yeah, no,
Anymore.
we can't. Like, it doesn't make sense for the listeners to hear it and then just a poor job of us doing it.
Right. They can sing along to the actual one.
It's
which
diminished returns. Yeah.
Right. I'm sure they are singing along to the actual.
Of course. How can you not? All right, I've got a question for you.
Okay, I've got an answer for you.
All right, let's do it. So we were at, we'll call it a school assembly. The entire high school is there, and it was fun. It was a pretty normal assembly. They made efforts to make it more fun, and at the end, our we'll call him the principal. He has to kind of turn the tides and make a serious comment on. At the end of day, class lets out, and primarily juniors and seniors and a few sophomores like leave the school. And someone in the community who will remain nameless, he never named, he reads an email that he got about kids revving their engines, peeling out, racing down the road. A few more details and all. But, I mean, the email went as far as saying, and as I was choking on the fumes of the car, I worried about them crashing into the... Which, that is when it sort of... Because, well, I will try not to editorialize too much in my opinion.
Did you write
ask
it? Did you write this email?
I did not.
Okay.
Aside from that silly line, I will say that the principal did his... He was sincere, and he said, "Look, this isn't just an old man scolding thing. I'm not even trying to scold you. I just simply want you to calculate the risk, reassess, and cut it out." And he said, I'm just concerned that the new norms." And he briefly touched on this, but like, and I happened to listen to a piece the other day that got me thinking about. Algorithms and people living in digital spaces, and they have new norms, so they don't know what our bigger cultural norms are. They think whatever they're searching, the algorithm says, give them more of that, give them more of that. So then they end up living in this digital world with weird and wacky norms, right? And so if you're a car person or whatever, racing, or you're just going to get sort of extreme content your way all the time, and you start to think things are normal that are not normal. And so he didn't go into that much detail even. He just touched on the idea of, like, he said, this isn't about our school being so prestigious and that we can't dishonor the school's reputation. He's like, it's not that. So my greater point is he just did a good job of saying, hey, like he did, let's for the sake of this event, just say he did the best job that a principal, an older man could do to get up there and talk to high school students and say, hey, slow down and cut it out. Like sincere, and the room was quiet and respectful. So then my question to you is, like, is that effective, and how effective is it? And like, what else could you? And he did mention like, we're going to be monitoring the situation because that's just what we have to do for your safety. But like, was this speech, effective? Should it be done even if it's not like? Well, anyway, I'll let you answer all of it.
I think it depends. First, is it true? I have my doubts about this anonymous email, and maybe it wasn't anonymous to him, but it was anonymous to everyone else. People are notorious in all circumstances for complaining about car noise and stuff, right? And if you peel out of the parking lot, I mean, that's not obviously some people do that, and teenagers may do that, but it's bad for your tires, and no one just does that all the time, right? And revving your engines, okay, big deal. Like, who cares? Like, it's for a small... I just think that it sounds like to me that this is just some, one of those women who sit by their window all day looking out, waiting for something to happen that they can comment on or call the neighborhood watch or something, and that this is an overblown complaint. And maybe it was from a donor, and that's why the principal decided to speak about it. That's what it seems like. So if that's the case, and there really isn't anything that bad going on, then I see this being ineffective, because if there really was no one peeling out and revving their engines, then the kids are going to continue to have the same driving behavior ultimately, and the person sitting by their window is going to hear the same noises, and they're going to be mad, and they're going to complain, and nothing will change. Now, if on the other hand there were some students legitimately peeling out and driving recklessly and whatnot, then it may have a minor effect. They may think about it and go, oh, they're talking about me. I did that last week, and they may refrain from doing that again. It may have a minor effect. The other thing I'll say on the strategy of the principal, I wouldn't think that the most successful strategy would be to say, you live in a digital... You said he didn't go into detail about this. You live in a digital world. You don't have a sense of norms. You shape up. I wouldn't think that message would work as well as you're going to our institution. You have a duty as a student here to uphold our reputation. This doesn't look good on us. Have some pride. That actually seems like a more, saleable point than the more general one. Not that the general one doesn't have a place. It just seems like that's a harder sell to students.
What do you think about the idea that, let's say they even agree and they sit there and they nod their heads in agreement. Is there a space in which particularly teenagers, I think all people do this, but particularly teenagers, will nod in agreement about something, whether it's safety, and maybe not an enthusiasm. They'll agree. They might even be like eye rolling, but they agree that, say, bullying is bad or doing dangerous things are dangerous. Like they're like, yeah, I know, I get it. And you could throw some really heavy hitting statistics about death or destruction or violent accidents or whatever it is, and they would agree. And then I think this is called the Superman complex, that you can both acknowledge, believe in, and support all the statistics and whatever, but you just this belief that, but I'm impervious to harm, but it won't happen to me, kind of thing. Do you think that plays a bigger role in teenagers' lives than in adults' lives?
Yeah, no question, right? I mean, they don't have the benefit of experience. They probably haven't had a moment where they thought they were invincible and then discovered suddenly that they weren't, right? There's a good chance they haven't had that moment. And so, where
they've had lots of incidents of maybe small risk taking and not being hurt walking. It's kind of, I don't know. It could be a small example would be jaywalking or something. You're told not to do it. It's dangerous. You grew up. It's kind of a classic look both ways before you cross the street. Yeah. But then, and you might even still, obviously it's just good form to look both ways before crossing the street, but you do it without the waiting for the walking guy signal. Yeah. And so you just start doing it and you're told it's kind of illegal. Signal? The walking white man. No. I mean, it is a white man or a white.
We can't release.
I suppose person is more accurate.
We can't release this.
Person might be more accurate. It is a person. I suppose. I guess But it is a white
The
person.
strutting white man.
It's literally a white,
the
not like
strutting white man.
the strutting white man.
I can't believe
The power walking white man.
I can't believe this society. Our norms. Ugh.
So, but you walk across without his go ahead, his grace,
Without his permission,
permission,
telling us, our white master on the signpost.
But you do this and you go, there's some form of like you get away with it, or it's possibly like kids cheating on some small, like, and they go, wait, you don't really get caught, even though you're told you will, and you don't really. And so then, that's the same, like, oh, I've heard drugs are bad and addiction's high, but I did it once and I'm not addicted. So therefore, there's some BS going on. There's something weird going on. I'll just go so maybe those statistics are real. I can acknowledge that, but it won't happen to me. And just carry on.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a part of it. And I think another part of it too, just with teenage behavior, is that their horizon of they're looking forward to the future. They're not as forward thinking as adults. Again, just simply because they've been alive for a shorter period of time, and so their time horizon is different. They're not thinking long term as much as they are short term, and their value system also hasn't been totally matured and worked out. So they may value the short term opinions of their friends, onlookers, their reputation or whatever, much more than this abstract risk of danger or damage in some way that they don't fully grasp. And I don't know, I don't have the life experience to understand that in any way other than this abstract way that people preach at me. And so, in the moment, especially in an emotional situation where maybe you're trying to impress a girl or something, right? Your values are going to tilt heavily towards, being Superman instead of carefully weighing the risks.
Well, okay. So, and I'm pulling this without having the article in front of me, but I recall, like, there's this myth, or at least ethos in our society that says, like, teenagers, their prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed and they don't know how to calculate risk appropriately.
Yeah.
And then, but the counter study, it's an interesting one though. It says actually they calculate risk just fine by evidence of there was some simulated driving tests, and they took like a 17-year-old, 16-year-old, whatever, and they made the same decisions in terms of risk with the 40-year-old test subjects. But then what happened is they introduced peers into the mix, and all of a sudden they're taking wild risks to impress their peers, and the 40-year-old is not.
Yep,
and
that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying.
So that's the real because you don't have a sense of self and your desire to belong, and I think that's with all of us. But at least the 40-year-old hopefully has a better sense of where they belong. The 17-year-old is assessing risk, but evaluating it differently, saying, you know what, it's worth possibly dying if that gains me social points. Whereas the 40-year-old, that's a laughable proposition, but it actually like carries weight to a young, unsure person. So that's fascinating that like maybe they do understand risk, but like we don't understand how deep. Like we've quickly forgotten the deep desire to belong, to like. I think it's
a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. I'm not familiar with the article that you're talking about. I think driving risk is easy to assess, but social risk is harder to assess. It's easier for an adult who's been exposed to many social situations and observe the outcomes of social situations. It's easier for an adult to assess social risk, not so much for a teenager. Well,
I guess what do you mean by social? Because they would be risk averse to stand out socially.
That's what a
teenager.
That's what I'm saying. They may not have had the experience of taking a social risk, failing, and having your reputation damaged by it. They may not have had that experience, right? Or whereas an adult probably has. There are many other kinds of socially related experiences that a teenager may not have had, and the experiences that they have had are warped because most of their audience, is made up of other teenagers who also have warped responses because they're not mature, right? So
Yeah.
I'm just saying that the risk calculation, when it's something cut and dry like driving, again, I don't know the article, but if it's like, do you drive 10 miles an hour over the speed limit in this situation, or 5, or none?
Yeah, or come to complete stops, or
Right.
when do you turn out?
This stuff,
how many gaps? Yeah.
these kinds of things beg the answer, and I don't know how the study was done, but I can see a teenager participating in this, giving the quote unquote right answers.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's some separate kind of risk, something that's maybe less cut and dry, that is, I mean, I feel like
I guess it's just like, oh, do you want to dive off this cliff together into the water below? And like,
Yeah.
it's like the teenager's more likely to do it than the older person. Now, let's assume the older person doesn't have back trouble or something like that. But they just look over the cliff and they go, well, and other people have done it. It is clearly feasible to do, but the older person's just more likely to go, nah, that's not worth it to me.
Sure. Well,
but
yeah,
they-
that's
they-
the values. That's the values thing, and that makes total sense to me. That fits with my intuition. The risk assessment is the other one, the one that you say, this study says actually, teens and adults have the same ability to assess risk. I'm not sure I buy that totally. I think maybe there's a little bit of that, in the case of driving.
Yeah, you're right. Like in quantitative situations where there
Right.
is a,
But imagine,
but if
imagine you asked a teenager to assess the risk of not doing any clubs next year at school, right? Like,
yeah,
they may not be able to assess that risk because it deals with longer term stuff that they have no experience with. How is that going to look on my college applications and so on, or is that going to fill up my time in the summer or whatever? Like, I don't know, this is just an example I'm pulling out of my butt, but they're going to have a harder time assessing that risk, whereas an adult would have an easier time assessing that risk, I think.
I think what's interesting when you say that their field of vision for the future is like, all right, well, I mean, I realize I've been teaching for 11 years and I'm always dealing with students at maximum with a 4-year vision, like they're in 9th grade, and they're when they think of their entire future, it's college. Like it's just defined by college, which is only 4 years away.
Right.
And that seems like an eternity to a 9th grader, and it kind of is, by the way, a
Yeah.
little kid 9th grader essentially. And so, but and then junior and senior and all of that is just 2 years away. And I think culturally we've messed up something, not only in the stresses of college and saying it's, decide what's for your career, but no one spends any time thinking about their lives. They think about getting into the best college.
Yeah.
They don't think about who do they want to be and how they want to exist and like, I guess, bigger existential stuff, but like they just go, what college and how do I best position myself for that?
Yeah.
And man, that's such a short, like think about how short 4 years. In fact, when I took this job, I was thinking like from my perspective, let's just say I was still in kind of a hop around, live in different areas. I mean, I hope this can be a permanent home. I really do. But like, I'd say even in a hop around state of mind, I'm like, 4 to 6 years here and then I'll go somewhere else.
Right.
And that's like a blasé-faire, like whatever. I'll jump around and set short of. That's blasé-faire.
Laissez-faire, is that the word?
Yeah,
That's a
that's
good
it. Blasé-faire. Yeah, that attitude, just
Yeah.
very blasé-faire about
blasé-faire.
it. Blah. And so, I didn't even mean to make it, but it's really good.
great.
I'm sticking with it. And so if I think that that's like the short term jumping around, but that's longer than they're conceptualizing their entire existence in the future.
Yeah.
And that's wild to me. So like, yeah, even me bouncing around, and that's going to dictate how I interact with the different relationships and stuff. But I would also argue that teenagers, they bond a lot quicker. Like they might go jump off that cliff together and actually feel like they are best friends, or at
Sure.
least currently best friends. And if you invited me to jump off a cliff into the water and like I just didn't want to, I'm like, well, first of all, you're a bad example because we're good friends. But if it's someone that I was even, starting to like and feel a bond with, I would just like, I don't need that bond the way someone like a teenager might feel they do. And I have other bonds and like, just don't want to do it. Nah. So I'm going to make a decision based on my desires and that don't include that desire to bond.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've built up a conceptualization of who you are and what kind of things you will and won't do, and a teenager may not have done that.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
But there's also kids that like want to jump off, want to connect, but they're just like scared. So risk is weird. Like risk averse people might either they could be have a good sense of self, and they could be more fearful, or they could be smart, I don't know, and accurately assessing the risk and just saying it's too much, even though I want the bond, it's too much.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah.
I have another. All right. We missed the last couple of episodes. We're trying to stick to a weekly schedule, but there's a good reason, because you were on your honeymoon.
Yeah.
Right? And so to commemorate, I want to go on an adventure with you. I want to have an adventure before you tell us about your adventure on your honeymoon.
All right.
An adventure.
That sounds great.
An adventure in etymology. Yeah. Everyone is excited.
Etymology.
All right. So
we need jingles for
everything.
Yeah, we need a jingle
Every
for that.
jingle.
Yeah, we do. I just think jingles make life better. We can make a musical podcast one day.
Jingles all the way.
I like it.
So yeah, normally we do 3. This time we're only going to do 1 to fit our shortened runtime, and it's the word honeymoon. So
Honeymoon.
the way this works is I have 3 potential etymological histories, origin stories of the word honeymoon, and you just try to tell me which one is the actual one.
Should I tell you what I'm thinking immediately, or just hear the 3? Just out of curiosity, like
Up
just
to you.
super
I think the previous times you've told me immediately after, so we can stick with that if you
after.
want.
I'll wait till after then.
Okay.
Yeah.
However you want to do it. All right. So
that sounds good.
The first option, honeymoon. This refers to the 3rd largest moon of Jupiter, which is called Io. That moon has a distinct yellow color because it has high volcanic activity. It emits a lot of sulfuric compounds. So it's
my favorite moon of Jupiter, actually.
Io?
Yeah, Io.
Okay. Anyway, it's one of the Galilean moons. Galileo discovered it in the 1600s, and you can actually see it from Earth, and it's notably yellow. So anyway, that's how it gained the name honeymoon, because honey is yellow. And there was also this story about it being the paradisical, I don't know how you say that word, home of Cupid, and he would spirit away newlyweds to his paradise for a night of, or a celebration of their love. So it was just
the honeymoon.
Yeah, it was just kind of a little tale on the honeymoon. On the honeymoon, then it wasn't called Io, but the honeymoon that we know as Io now. And that's where it came from.
Interesting. All right.
The other option for you to pick is that actually the origin of the word honeymoon is kind of a ribald sort of thing from the mid-1800s. And it refers to the first time a newly married couple sees each other naked. Honey is a common term of endearment, obviously. And mooning, you may be aware, is the act of bearing one's bottom. And so a honeymoon is an event in which one's honey bears their bottom. And that's actually where it comes from.
I hope that's real. Yeah.
The final option is that it actually originates from the 1500s, or maybe earlier. It's really old, and it refers to the temporary period of sweetness after marriage. The sweetness part obviously comes from honey. It's as sweet as honey. And then the moon refers to a month. It's a month of sweetness after you get married, and then after that, it fades. But the honeymoon is that period of sweetness immediately after marriage.
That sounds plausible too, the honeymoon. I mean, we use that term outside of the actual honeymoon time. We're in our honeymoon phase. I mean, that could be used for classes are well behaved at the beginning of school, honeymoon phase. Well, I like all of these. The honeymooning. I would thought it would not. You could have fooled me. I know nothing. By the way, I don't have anything to grasp.
They didn't tell you
out
this
here.
at the orientation, the honeymoon orientation.
No, they didn't.
Oh.
But you could have convinced me that it developed like within the last 100 years or so, like that terminology.
Sure.
And you could have said it was the honey, the term of endearment, and like I'm over the moon to be with you. That was just what popped in my head immediately without time to bake it would be like, honey, I'm over the moon, let's go.
Right,
Like,
okay, yeah.
and combining these sorts of things. And so the reason Jupiter's third moon, or one of
The
three
third
moons,
largest.
Io,
Yeah.
third largest, Io,
Mm-hmm.
and it's Cupid's home, or paradise. you would
Whatever
say.
Cupid's destination is that he sweeps away newlyweds to in the tale.
Astronomy and mythology and like stars, I get it, but like I don't know that we were seeing little moons. And so something probably timeline in terms of human knowledge feels a little iffy. Like I get that we were putting Orion's belt and stuff like that, but I don't think we were seeing Jupiter's third largest moon.
I mean, that's what
and-
Galileo did.
Yeah, I stand by it.
Okay,
Though.
all right.
I stand by my
Fine, I understand.
reasoning.
I can't convince you in this part of the adventure.
It might have been guilty of like a little too many Bennett details, like getting to this sulfuric. Like you're like, maybe if I say sulfuric and a few words to make Daniel's eyes glaze over, then like give it some just meat, some like intellectual meat.
Sure.
So I'm gonna discard the first one.
Okay.
For that reason. I'm most, in terms of story, the best story is like the moon, like the burying the bottom and honey being a term of endearment. And it seems plausible enough. I could see honey not being a new term of endearment, like one that's just been around. I mean, since honey, this is
Since
sweet,
honey was
you're
invented,
sweet.
yeah.
Since honey was invented, since we named honey. So, and then the third one, I'm blanking. Sorry.
The period of sweetness
Yeah,
lasts for
that-
1 moon, aka 1 month.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. So, I mean, that's nice. I think that's it. The third one is it. But the second one was my favorite, and the first one, I feel most confident is not it. All right, there we go.
Ah, you got it right.
Dang, I'm kind of disappointed.
I'm a little disappointed too, but I think it's probably because they told you on your actual honeymoon. They told you the
I'm
origin,
lying
and
to
you
you.
cheated, and so this is really cheating. Actually, Daniel, the third largest moon of Jupiter, Io, is yellow because of volcanic activity with sulfuric compounds, and Galileo did see it with his telescope. Io is one of the Galilean moons. So
Okay.
suck it.
All right, well,
But the home of Cupid is totally BS that I made up.
Invented.
So
yeah.
part of it was true.
Well, the
Jerk.
Galilean, okay, that I can believe that he saw the moon, but like I'm confused. Galileo and like Zeus, did they exist at the same
Okay. All right. Shut up.
but
None of that.
But these mythological
Yeah.
stories, like, and Galileo weren't at the same time,
No.
and so, and that's what I'm saying is that Cupid wouldn't have had that moon as a home, and that's actually my point. So,
Cupid would have
not
come.
that Galileo.
Yeah, Cupid. It's Greek, right?
There wouldn't have been a tale about Cupid going to that moon.
Is
That
Cupid
just
Greek or
wouldn't have-
Roman? Either way, it doesn't matter. It was long before Galileo.
Exactly. That's the math I was doing.
But Galileo certainly knew about Cupid, right? He knew about
Yeah,
Cupid.
so the story could
the story's
evolve,
plausible.
I suppose.
Yeah, the tale
yeah,
of Cupid
yeah.
spiriting away newlyweds.
Oh, and then the word honeymoon comes about. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
then-
You're just making the case that honeymoon came after. Yeah, you're right.
right.
Okay.
It's plausible. And yeah, the honeymooning. Yeah, I like that one too, but not true.
Yeah, that one like
Should
I
be
could
true.
have guessed. It should be true, you know.
I'm sure
you're
you and Danielle did some mooning on the honeymoon,
honeymooning,
right?
some mooning our
Of
yeah.
passerbyers.
Yeah, we were just mooning some passerbyers. Passers-bying. Passerbyers,
Passing
passers-by.
passerbying in the night.
Speaking of honeymoon, I'll tell you a little bit about it.
Was it good?
We went to. It was good.
Do you regret? So you're gonna stick with the marriage then? I take it.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think we're gonna stick with the marriage.
Okay. Just checking.
we actually did not get to go on a honeymoon after we got married over the summer, and I, we traveled the very next day to my new place of
Residence.
residence, and was getting ready for the job and all of that.
Yeah.
So for spring break, we packed our bags and went. And what we did is we wanted to, money's kind of tight at the moment, but we also wanted to celebrate. And it really comes, like, when you start planning a vacation that's not some huge epic thing, like some interesting questions, like, well, why do people go to the beach and stuff? And,
stealing my thunder,
we
man.
lived near the beach, and like it's just like, why do that? And so I like the mountains. She does too. We got engaged in the mountains. So what we did is we decided to actually look up interesting Airbnbs, and because that's an actual like category. You can look up unique Airbnbs and see some wonky, wacky stuff. Mm-hmm. And we found this really awesome tree house that was actually a tree house, but with running water and like multiple floors and like bridges and like a lot of porches and like literally 2 outdoor claw tubs that you could say, "Hey Alexa, fill up." Actually, had to say it's bath time or it's bubbly time or something goofy, because I kept saying, hey. I knew we could. I had read it and I was like, "Hey Alexa, fill up the tub." "Hey Alexa, fill tub." I was trying different variations, and then I had to go back and read, and then I just went, and it was not bath time. It was even goofier.
It's
it was
bubbly,
like,
bubbly,
it's bubbly,
washing time.
It's bubble baby time, or so. It really was that goofy. So but I just did it with a pan face. It was kind of a funny moment, right? And so, but just okay. So it was in a small town. I could say the town, right? There's no reason not to.
I mean, you traveled there.
Yeah, in Trenton, Georgia. And like, it was so tiny, and we arrived, like, check-in was at 4:00. We arrived at like 3:30 we went ahead and put in Ingles, right? That's the grocery store in some smaller towns, like kind of like a Piggly Wiggly or something. And I've been to Ingles that are like nice, just as nice as like a Publix or something like that.
Yeah, same here.
But this one was like Ingles, I guess, from the 80s or something. I don't know. It was very, very, it was just immediately like, this is an older place to shop. And I said I've either driven by Ingles. I can't like tell you I've definitely been to Ingles. But I had this image in my head of basically a Publix, but with red lettering instead. And, but this one was like, whoa, we're like, I don't know. We're just somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so Danielle and but we're in a delightful mood. And so we're like taking a selfie. First thing, we get out of car, we get at Ingles. It's so like, there's not many cars. Like, so we're standing right in front of the store where you would be the most traffic, I suppose.
Yeah.
And we're taking a selfie to get the Ingles in the background.
That's funny.
And this little old lady, I say old, but I've learned that people there, like real mountain folk, like they age pretty poorly. Like most of the people that waited on us at restaurants.
She probably like just got out of the coal
women,
mine and stuff. Is that what you're saying?
Well, so this lady was leaning out of her like old person car, like a Mercury or a Buick or something,
yeah.
Or a Cadillac or something, just some big oversized vehicle. And she had a not a wheelchair, but like
a walker,
a walker, and she sees us and then goes, yeah, and like positions herself back in her car seat and raises both of her hands like, yeah.
That's funny.
And she like cheers with us.
You young'uns must be on your honeymoon to the Ingles.
Yeah, well, and I recognize when we walked around, like, I read like a city boy, and it's not like I'm wearing really unusual clothes.
How many way stretch? Were you wearing?
That's the thing.
They only have like 1 or 2 way stretch in Trenton, Georgia. I'm sure.
I was wearing my like Lululemon athletic wear.
Well, there you go.
It's like fairly fitted and like straight, and like so like I just stand out because the guys are in just baggy jeans with like,
she's probably like, what's that
shirt,
homosexual man doing with that pretty young lady?
So she proceeds to like, walk her on up, use her walker and amble up to us, and she's like, where are y'all from? You're not from around here. And she starts to kind of like we're kind of walking in. We're like as she's coming up to us, we're kind of moving in. So we make our way in, and she starts to point out some like really sweet things. Like there was like half baked or no bake cookies and stuff. And Danielle was kind of eyeing it. She's like, "You gotta get those."
Yeah.
And then she's saying things like, let me ask you, do you like peanuts or nuts of any kind? And Danielle goes, well, not really. She's, well, you gotta get these, and she's like walking us over to this chocolate covered peanuts. And then she immediately is like, my husband has cancer and my son has cancer, and she gets sort of like cryy and is like,
oh, no.
Pray for me, but she's also her name is Willene. It's
a nice name.
Yeah, Willene, very Southern. And I want to be clear that I'm not mocking her, but it was just so striking how suddenly she was sharing intimate details that, like,
I mean, that's
in
a way, like that's kind of endearing, right? Small town kind of feel.
It was 100% endearing. We were charmed, except that she was sad.
Yeah, of course.
And like,
right.
and she was looking. She goes, "I'm just looking for." It was like orange juice and lemon juice or something. And she didn't know where you'd just get a bunch of lemon juice. And interestingly enough, we like kind of went our separate ways, and I found like a big tub of lemon juice, like more than I would think.
Bought it all up.
And so I brought it to her because like she had gotten one of the little carts, the mobile like wheelchair, powered whatever. And so, but that was our first like encounter.
That sounds like a fun honeymoon. That sounds like that was pretty good. Pretty good trip. What an adventure. That's great.
That was like
glad you had a good time.
Arguably the most story-worthy thing, because we had signed up for hang gliding and it just kept getting canceled.
Yeah,
like it got canceled like 4 times, and that's very frustrating. It's the thing we were looking forward to most.
Yeah, that would be fun. But instead of hang gliding, you get to hang out with Willene.
Yeah. Yeah.
And have some lemon juice, some lemonade. Homemade lemonade.
Danielle had never been to. This was 20 minutes away from Chattanooga, so we did things that I recall doing this frequently as a kid. We would go to Ruby Falls and look out Mountain Rock City.
I remember that.
You know
stuff.
That Sea Rock City, like
the
red,
sign.
it's like a birdhouse looking sign with a black roof and and it's in white lettering that says Sea Rock City, and then they sell the little birdhouses all over the place there too.
Now Ruby Falls is in a cave, right? This like underground.
Yes, that is a cave.
I remember seeing that
with a
when I
big
was a
waterfall.
kid.
Yeah. Isn't that weird? Like, when did you? It's not like we went as a. Did we go as a field trip or anything?
I don't think so.
Okay. But just like we all did it, like
we all
I'm
did.
pretty sure, like everyone in Macon like went to Ruby Falls. At
You know
some
what
point.
I heard?
I don't know.
I heard that somewhere up there in North Georgia is like the deepest pit, like the deepest hole in the United States or something. Some like gigantic hole that you can like rappel down to the bottom, like free fall down.
So they've made like a tourist site out of it. Like
I think so. Yeah, it's like this
it.
huge deep hole. Yeah, I don't know. That just seems like something you would do on your honeymoon too.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, that was the thing, is like getting, like I don't know, like doing those things were all just bonus. We really just wanted to relax and like eat a bunch of nachos. That's another funny thing is Danielle's favorite food is nachos, and I'm not kidding. Like she ordered more than 9 nachos. Like in fact, there were.
When you say you mean orders of nachos.
Orders of nachos. So what I mean is every meal she ordered nachos except for maybe 2 or 3.
That's
and
actually pretty funny.
It's so funny because we'd look at the menu and I'd look at her and be like, "Are you getting nachos seriously?" And she'd be like, "Well, yeah, it's just what I want." And I will, like, to defend her. First of all, nachos are delicious and they are diverse. Like some were like, some come with the various forms of cheese. Some were like barbecue nachos. Some were like, like just funky nachos and all of that. But like, even who like, it's one of my favorite foods. I love cheese, and I would just be like, really? You can't. I mean, it would be a 5th meal in a row of nachos. I mean, great for dinner, like, so we might get something else for lunch or something like that.
Right.
But yeah, she really loves nachos. Jeez. Like that is just unequivocally her favorite food. No one could argue. Yeah. So.
On the topic, of like trips and vacations, what's your personal philosophy on vacations? Like some people they love travel. It seems like in the the last few years, I don't know if this is your impression or not, people our age or younger have really absorbed travel as part of their identity, you know? They love to travel to different countries, especially international travel, and they see themselves kind of as travelers. Um, and they try to travel very often, maybe even irresponsibly often. But what is your take? Like, do you identify as a traveler? Do you understand that identification? And what's your ideal pace of travel?
Uh, so I understand it. I don't know if I identify as a traveler, but I like this idea of invest in memories, not things. So, and memories are very memorable when you travel, when you go experience something different. To create memories, you can't just do the same thing over and over. It's just all kind of molds. Like there's pleasure in going to like that same restaurant and getting that good meal, but I wouldn't call that like a memory making thing. Whereas, traveling, you're creating memories. So I like, and in fact, that's kind of the driving philosophy of travel for me is like go invest in some memories. Also, the anticipation is half the fun. And so I would rather, let's say I had 20 days of travel a year, I would like to do like 5 4-day trips. And so that way I'm constantly like, I have 5 ways to anticipate or like to look forward to and then go on this trip and all of that versus someone might say I want to take a 20 days off, I want to really get into it, really want to check out. You could convince me to do like 4 trips of 5 days, something like that. But honestly, unless you're doing some international big scope travel, I think you can do what you want to do in 4 or 5 days. And it lets you get away from things. It also like makes you miss your bed, and there's like some delight in returning home. And so I travel to make memories, which also means I'm traveling for a little bit of adventure and doing things. So I don't want to do like there are people that just really do want to do nothing, and it is about, I don't want to say being gluttonous and lazy, but because that's like I also sympathize. Who doesn't want to sit around and eat delicious food and just really not do anything? That's great, but I do feel like I could do a staycation with that. Like I really will just sit home, watch TV, and order some good food. Like I can get that from home. So when I'm out, I want to eat at the local restaurants, and I want to figure out. And yeah, I look at the touristy stuff because the touristy stuff's pretty great. Like it has to be good enough to draw people from elsewhere. It has to be remarkable enough to do that. So it doesn't bother me that it's touristy. And now, of course, I want to feel like an insider too, where I go to a local pub or something like that. Or like there's a whole book called Atlas Obscura. We bought a copy of it. Have you ever heard of it?
Never heard of it.
Atlas Obscura. I think it's gaining some popularity, which would make it not as obscura. But it's like
They'll just have to call it Atlas soon.
It's yeah. You look up any town or whatever, and it gives you the kind of oddball, off the map attractions that you're not going to see as like the top 10 on TripAdvisor or something like that. And so it's kind of a neat way if you're going to a city. It's a website too. So when you're like wanting to look for quirkier, oddball things, Atlas Obscura is the way to go. And it's just a nice book. It's a very good coffee table book too. Just because it's like full of things, like something that like David would be really attracted to is like, if you enjoy cities and like personality and behind things and like odd little attractions, like that's a cool, like I'm sure House on the Rock would be one, even though
right.
So it doesn't have to be like hidden necessarily, but it's just not stuff you hear people talking about all the time. It's not like Grand Canyon or
Old Faithful.
Like
Yeah. How big of a part of a vacation is experiencing a new situation or culture?
Huge, I would say. I guess I have to delineate. There's different types of travel. I think there can be romantic travel, which is really about you and your partner going and having some fun, right? Like just like
Sure.
like and a romantic time, like make it. Well, I don't want to keep saying the word romantic, but like have fun, like be sexy about it and invest in each other. And so go to
Moon some people.
Go to a fine dining restaurant, get dressed up, like go see a show. Because the thing is, I love going to see shows, and I like getting dressed up and having a fancy night out. I mean, affordability is an issue, but like Like I like that event. So, but I would never really want to do that with you. Like you and I go
Oh, come
put on
on.
like our suits and go see a show and like go to fine dining would just be like, first of all, knowing you're not even that big
No,
into
I would
theater
hate
and
that.
stuff. It would
I would
just
rather
getting
have a
dressed up.
staycation. I'd rather not go on that trip with
even
you.
if you even if you did like that stuff, I'd just be like, I don't want to do it with you. Like I don't know. Like it just feels like something I want to do with Danielle. So there's a romantic travel. Then I think there's like a party travel, and but I'll even say within the party confines is like I still want to understand the different culture and get out there and meet people and go out of places and like drink a little bit and like just see what adventures you can get into. And then I guess there's sort of a self exploration travel, and that could be like maybe like a hike along like the Appalachian Trail or something like that, where you are there's time to think and contemplate,
Meditative retreat.
yeah, I
Spa.
mean, it's a little, it's yeah, like some self exploration of who you are, where you're at, and like so it's less about the travel and more about you. But I think that can be done. I don't think that's a mutually exclusive trip, because I think like Appalachian Trail would be both an adventure and just time to think.
Yeah.
I think you could go on a party. Like I could do a friend travel with you. You and me and David could go somewhere, and like it would be a party style trip. But I would obviously be so interested in culture and stuff. And in that culture, like I guess when I'm learning about other cultures, I'm learning about myself. I don't see those as so how foreign is this idea to me? Can I understand why this culture developed that way? How can I take the good, like bidets, and like
Right.
and leave the bad, like really small beds.
Yeah.
I mean, those are just items, but like I even mean like attitude wise and things like that. Like how do they conceptualize relationships? And so I look at it. Maybe this is very selfish, but I look to understand others, but like I can't help but understand others in relation to myself. Of course, like I don't know if that's even possible.
So basically, you want to learn. You want to learn
Yeah.
from others in order to make your world and the world of the people immediately around you better. That sounds really selfish and awful.
Well, I guess this just sounds almost like I guess another form of trip could be educational.
Yeah.
But and that is the cultural experiences. But I guess this is cool. This is a cool thing about me, that I'm intertwining my partying and my educational and learning
Well,
experience,
yeah, obviously,
and my development as this person.
Yeah,
So.
the lines between those can get blurred a bit, and depending on the length of the trip, like you said, you can maybe do all you want to do in 4 or 5 days. If it's a longer trip, maybe you have some relaxation, some partying, and some education. On different days and times. It's likely
Right,
that all
because
those things.
travel's not a singular experience.
Yeah.
You go and you do different
It
things.
can
and
be, but
hopefully-
more often I suspect it's not. Yeah, I was trying to think, what are the benefits? What are the benefits of travel? And, what I came up with, take a break from the normal routine. That, that's obvious, right? I would
Right.
say that's perhaps why
maybe the best thing about it.
yeah, most people take vacations for that reason, I would say. And then there's the observe new situations or cultures. That's kind of the educational component. And then chaos, right? Like putting yourself in a new situation. That's the adventure. That's the risk-taking, hang gliding, the hanging out with Willene. All of that stuff is chaos. And then I guess...
Oh, we had a person come to the cabin and like make us really fancy like pancakes and
that's nice.
French toast and stuff.
I love
too.
some French toast. It's my favorite breakfast food.
So good. And I got a bananas Foster drizzle. Oh my gosh, so good.
And then I guess the other benefit, those are the ones that I can understand, but the one that's a little foreign to me is I am a traveler, and therefore I will travel and mark this off on my my scratch off map or whatever, so that I can say I've been there. That's a benefit to some people. It's kind of like a notch on their belt sort of thing to have.
But that's like
been
people
somewhere.
getting tattoos to be interesting instead of like
it is.
they had something interesting and they got a tattoo to commemorate
It is. I
or
mean, it is
something.
that way. That's why I say it's a little foreign to me. I don't quite understand it, but it seems Like maybe it's just my observation, but it seems like people have really latched onto that. Have you noticed that at all?
I've noticed it's absolutely well. It's usually the characteristics of someone who travels. They are curious. They want to learn all the things you just said, and so it's a concise way to package in. I'm interested, interesting. I'm curious. I'm a learner, and so it's a very very favorable way to portray yourself. Is like I'm battling my ignorance by engaging with the world, and like that's such an attractive thing. So
Well, let me tell you
it would
one
not surprise.
one
Yeah.
anecdote. So I went on a date with a girl earlier in the year who told me that one of her goals was to visit every country in the world.
That's daunting.
It's
and,
daunting. She's already been to, I forget the number, 75, some huge number, right? All of Europe, all of South America, all of North America.
Does she get like a spoon or a shot glass?
I don't know.
What does she at each country?
I mean, I don't know, but the sense I got from this person was this identity of traveler. And if you tell me, oh, I've been to Europe and I've been to Australia and I've been to Japan and whatever, I go, oh, that's really cool. Tell me about those places. But if you say, I'm a traveler and I'm going to go to every country in the world, then it turns from something cool and interesting to something a little negative to me, and it's kind of like it turns me off a little bit. What do you think about that? Like, do you think that's a good read or a bad read?
I think you're onto something because a lot of people like there's this common expression that we experience is the best teacher, and I say no. Like experiences don't teach you anything. Reflection on experiences teach you things. So we typically think of someone who has traveled the world as wise, right? They're a world traveler, they're wise. But imagine, and it's easy to imagine this, someone who's traveled the world and they did not reflect, therefore they had experiences without reflection, and they don't have much to say. They're just like, oh, the food was weird, or maybe they're even more encyclopedia like they could just say, oh, I met this tribe who did this.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, but facts in isolation without you like synthesizing it and wrestling with it and doing something with it, like what do you? Yeah, it's this substitute. I mean, it's just like I assume we're so close. When you say you travel, I'm so close to just going, I love it. I love that. And when you say this person wants to travel the world and go to every country, I go, cool. But that's my knee-jerk reaction because I'm thinking they're curious. But if I started talking and they just were like, not actually. If it was self-serving totally and not like to learn, and I would start to go, and it would start to get really not interesting, especially if they could tell you like maybe they like have a journal and they like tell you 2 facts about the place or whatever. They have a goal of truly like collecting a shot glass, and you're like, okay, well if you're gonna go to every country, go ahead and get the one item. That would be I would go ahead and do that as a marker, but like I would be doing it with like a goal of like you better be, are you keeping a journal and then like, contrasting all of this and like seeing what what's one cultural thing I can adapt in my life. And like, if that's your goal, then I'm like fascinated and want to talk all about it. If you just start saying, it's kind of like, someone pointing to a tattoo and just saying like, I got it cause I like owls or whatever. It's just like, you're like, okay. But like, you're like, tell me more. Like, did you grow up liking owls? Not really. I just saw them at TJ Maxx a lot. And there's this really cute figurine and, well, that's what I'm saying. If your decor sensibilities derive from, just what's on the shelves at Target, it's like, and that's what I'm. So if this gains steam, this positive thing, I think ultimately is traveling and all of that. That gains steam, and now you're gonna have some people that just go, oh, well, I do that.
Yeah. Here's a thought that occurred to me. I wonder if there's any similarity. Like I've complained before. We had an episode before about pets. Remember about the anthropomorphization of pets. I forget which episode.
And pet ownership rising and all of that.
Yeah, exactly. As kind of a coping mechanism for either loneliness or mental issues or whatever. And people are really going overboard with treating their pets as children, making their pets part of their identity. And, I made it clear in the episode and I'll make it clear again now. And I don't have anything against pets. I think pets are fine. Dogs are nice and all that. In the same way that travel is nice. And if you tell me, I traveled to Europe, I go, wow, that's really cool. Where did you go? And if you tell me I have a dog, oh, okay, what kind? But if you tell me I'm going to every country, then I go, and I'm a traveler, or if you tell me I'm a dog mom and here's my sweet fur baby, then I go, is there something similar there? I feel like there's
It's an interesting comparison.
there's a there's
substituting personality for
there's a
something,
diminishment
right?
of self, and you're putting, maybe it is just that offloading of identity. Like, I don't. There's really nothing.
Can this be done?
There's nothing in
Yeah,
here
it can be
in
done in
my
everything,
soul.
though.
Nothing in here, but there's travel. I've traveled places. I have a fur baby. That's me.
Yeah.
I mean, you can. Yeah, I think
That-
you're
well-
right. You can do that with other things too. Certainly.
Well, like teaching, like a lot of my identity is wrapped up in being a teacher, but like that's a constantly morphing thing. And I would say being a teacher, it's such a massive, like, it's trying to be a good communicator, and I don't know, it's a lot of things, and I am fascinated by it, and I'm constantly challenging and redefining it. But I do think that there are people that would also say, like, oh, a lot of my identity is being a teacher. And for instance, I know, I like professional development opportunities and going and doing like a thing over the summer and about a workshop or something. But I get there, and I've gotten better about spotting the teacher who just doesn't have a whole lot going on. I don't even think the kids like them, and they just go to these PD things, and they like, that's where they get their joy. And it kind of makes me sad. They just they like socializing with other like just kind of frumpy adults who are also in the same shoe, and they're just like, they say they like being a teacher, or like they've assumed this identity, but it's really an offload of identity. It's really an abdication of like
the hard work,
the craft of
yeah.
teaching, or the real thing.
Yeah.
The real thing that like I guess it's a high level complaint, but like I want things to be meaningful, and when I see people just substituting meaning with like these tropes or these like, and it could be anything. It could be like, I'm a reader. I'm gonna read. Like, what do you think of someone who says, I'm gonna read 200 books this year or 100 books this year?
It's
know?
the
Like,
same reaction at first. Just like, oh, cool, but
well, it's neat. It's like reading is good.
Sure.
For the most part, this is an admirable. Like, I get excited, like, wow, good on you, and all that. But then if you just said, so tell me like what you've learned. Wait, is there some like, what is it? Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just the why. If you don't have much of a why, it's like, how did you make something so, like, I'm trying to imagine the person who says, I'm going to go to every country, I'm reading 100 books a year. These are all things that are like ultra fascinating, like high likelihood of being a cool freaking person. Mm-hmm. So like, for me, it's overwhelmingly a positive thing, but like, man, it's kind of just, it makes me chuckle to think like, and then I talk to that person, and they like, there's not much going on.
Yeah.
And like, so on paper, they look super interesting.
Yeah, maybe that's
think this could
maybe
be
that's the strategy.
It could be the online dating like world too, is just like, how do I distill interesting, the projection of interesting? How do I make it like this potent?
That's
like,
what I
I'm
would
gonna have
think.
150 characters or whatever. So you say things like work, travel.
That's what I would
read.
think. But I mean, this particular person actually, they're a third of the way there. So that's something. Let me ask one final question about, and along similar lines. What do you think about van life? Have you heard the term van life?
No, but is it where you like
live in a
put
van,
a good bit of money into a van, and like you refurbish it to where it's like TikTok ready, or like Instagram
whatever,
cute, and all like like it looks pretty good.
It doesn't have to be doesn't have to be social media, whatever. Like people can have different circumstances,
hippie,
but it is hippie.
Yeah.
Yeah, you live in a van and you travel around, and you're just always traveling, and you live in a van. Maybe you work remote. Maybe you're TikToking it up. Like, I don't know what the circumstances
It's just
are.
sort of like, I hear that and I romanticize it for a minute. It makes me think, oh, like, I will admit that my knee jerk is that's pretty cool, this sort of transient nature, go with the wind. Like, that I romanticize that because, like, perhaps a little too much order in my life. I'm attracted to bizarre and chaos, and I'm like, oh, what are all the adventures they go on? But in reality, if you really push me, I'm like, they might have some severe commitment issues, or the inability to like sort of engage in the grind of life that we all need to in order to have like a society and the privileges that we have. And so I kind of, it just is like, I don't really like, it's not for me, and I don't necessarily like, I would enjoy a long bar conversation with someone like that, but then they're gonna leave anyway. They just there's some I don't think that like I don't think a really well-rounded, thoughtful, intelligent, hardworking, balanced person does that. I think that like something in their life, like they, whether it's something, a personality trait where they like, if people find, they worry about either being found out or they've had enough experience, and or they just want an excuse not to engage in that job that's not that fun, and
Yeah,
and
I
so
have,
then
I have the
and
same
then there's plenty of
similar impressions.
romanticizing that.
Yeah.
It's a romantic idea, isn't it? Like hit
Yeah.
the road, kind of like. And
Yeah,
so
I mean, yeah, I have
yeah.
the same impressions. I ask about that because in the area where I live, there's actually a surprising amount of van lifers. I guess just because I'm in a scenic area that people travel to. Like again on the dating apps and stuff, a lot of times people come up and they're just like living that van life, and to me, it's an instant. Okay, well, I'm not interested anymore. I'm
Yeah.
not interested in a van
It
life
would be a
where
deal breaker to me, but I'd be very close. I'd be okay. The van lifer that would intrigue me is to say I took a gap year in college and did a van life to see what it was like.
sure, yeah,
Before I was like, and that's kind of like that's cool. If someone had a light, like I was a year of my life I lived in a van, I'm like, you're interesting. But if you're just like,
don't know
this is
what's
who
next.
I am.
Yeah.
Again, it's the identity things. Like, this is who I am. What do you mean? You don't want like stability or commitment to a relationship or a job or anything worth pursuing. Like takes like some investment.
Yeah.
You're sort of abdicating that,
Yeah.
and so that's not as cool as saying I'm going to read a bunch of books or I'm going to travel the world. Like to me, there's like it suggests travel. I guess it is travel.
Sure.
Like I am so invested in travel that I'm going to minimize everything else. But like I have a feeling that a lot of van lifers and like the druggies and burnouts and like
Some
people who
overlap.
can't,
Yeah.
some true commitment issue people, like not like we say, oh, I have commitment issues, no, but like true like I don't know, diagnosable issues, like those are
Yeah.
the ones attracted to that van life. So
Yeah. I think you could be
man,
right.
I'm sounding so judgy of them.
You are
but,
real
like,
judgy. You're such a bastard.
it's just, like,
You're making
I
it
think
easy.
it's probably true.
Making it easy for me, man. I don't even have to. I don't have to play that role. I can be the nice guy.
I just it might. I'm sure there's some lovely van lifers.
There you go. There you go. Buy it back a little bit. I agree. There are probably some real nice van lifers. Probably some great people with tattoos out there somewhere.
Somewhere.
Dog moms. They're wonderful. Maybe one
Great
of them.
dog moms and world travelers and book readers.
Yeah,
You're
those
all-
book readers. They're, I'm sure there's a couple of decent ones somewhere.
Yeah.
All right.
All
It's
right,
over.
Bye.
Bye.
Doot, doot, doot,
Doot, doot, doot,
doot,
doot.